Reuben had spent years traveling the country's highways. He was a solitary man, weathered by the asphalt and the long nights on the road. His face bore the marks of time and exhaustion, but also a steady gaze, that of someone who knew every curve and every danger of the roads. That morning, the sun barely filtered through the grey clouds when he entered the depot's office. Marcos, his boss, was waiting behind the desk with a grave expression, holding a folder. "Reuben," he said in a dry tone, "I need you to take Trailer 47. There's an urgent delivery up north." "No one else can do it," Reuben frowned. "The 47. Wasn't that the one that sat idle for months after the accident in the mountains?" Marcos nodded without looking up. "It's been checked. It's in good condition. Only you can handle that route. There's a good bonus if you take it." Reuben hesitated. He'd heard stories about that trailer, whispers among the mechanics, things they preferred not to repeat out loud. But the money was good, and his situation didn't allow him to turn down the job. He took the keys, signed the papers, and headed to the depot. There stood Trailer 47, imposing under the midday light, its paint gleaming and its tires brand new. But there was something strange. The air around it felt heavier, as if silence enveloped everything. Reuben climbed into the cab, ran his hand over the steering wheel, and started the engine. The roar sounded deeper than usual, almost like a moan. The journey began smoothly. The highway stretched out before him like an endless ribbon of asphalt. The radio crackled with static, and the sky took on an orange hue, signaling the arrival of dusk. As he drove, Reuben felt an unease that was hard to explain. In the rear-view mirror, the container loomed dark and massive, as if it hid something more than just cargo. Hours later, night fell over the highway. The moon, barely visible, cast pale glimmers on the trees lining the road. Reuben drove with a furrowed brow when a metallic sound echoed from the back, a sharp thud, then another. He eased off the gas and checked the mirrors but saw nothing. "Probably some loose crate," he muttered. Yet the thuds continued, more rhythmic, more insistent, as if something was moving inside the container. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He turned on the radio to distract himself, but only static came through. Then a voice slipped through the noise, so faint it was barely audible. "You shouldn't have started it again." Reuben shut off the radio immediately. He took a deep breath and tried to convince himself it was just fatigue. Kilometers later, he spotted a figure on the side of the road. An old man hunched over, wearing tattered clothes and a hat that barely covered his face. He was signaling for help. Reuben hesitated, but something in the man's gaze compelled him to stop. He lowered the window. "Good evening, sir. Are you headed somewhere?" he asked. "To Kilometer 42, son," the old man replied in a raspy voice. "My house is nearby. Could you give me a ride?" Reuben nodded. The old man climbed into the trailer slowly, without a word. For several minutes, silence reigned in the cab. Only the engine broke the calm. Reuben tried to make conversation. "Do you live alone out there?" he asked. "For a long time now," the old man replied, staring straight ahead. "But no one visits me anymore." The atmosphere grew strange. The air felt colder, and Reuben noticed a faint fogging on the windshield, as if a mist was seeping in from inside. He glanced at the old man out of the corner of his eye. His skin was pale, almost translucent. Reuben thought of the stories about Trailer 47, but pushed them out of his mind. He didn't want to imagine things. Finally, they reached the indicated spot. An old house stood among the trees, its windows broken and the door ajar. "This is it," the old man said without moving a muscle in his face. Reuben turned off the engine. "Are you sure? That house looks abandoned." "It is, but I need to go in." the old man replied curtly. "Wait for me here. I won't be long." The old man got out slowly and disappeared into the shadows. Reuben waited a few minutes, but time passed, and the man didn't return. He checked the clock. Over 20 minutes had gone by. Impatient, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped out. The house's door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside it smelled of dampness and rotting wood. The walls were covered in mold, and the floor was littered with dry leaves. "Sir," Reuben called, "are you here?" No answer. He walked down the hallway and noticed a mirror hanging on the wall. The flashlight illuminated the reflection, and his heart skipped a beat. Behind him, in the mirror, the old man was sitting in the trailer's passenger seat, motionless, staring straight ahead. Reuben spun around, but no one was outside. He looked back at the mirror. Empty. He ran back to the truck, breathing heavily. He climbed into the cab and glanced at the passenger seat. It was empty. Trembling, he started the engine. The radio came on by itself. Amid the static, he heard the same voice. "You shouldn't have stopped here." He slammed the dashboard and shouted, but the noise grew louder. The thuds in the container returned, so strong that the vehicle shook. With his heart pounding, Reuben floored the gas, determined not to look back. Throughout the rest of the night, the thuds gradually faded, replaced by a strange hum, like a lament that seemed to follow the rhythm of the engine. Reuben couldn't shake the image of the old man in the mirror. He knew something was wrong, but he had to complete the delivery. Hours later, with the first rays of dawn, he reached a deserted gas station. He stopped to fill the tank and took the chance to check the container. When he opened the doors, a blast of cold air hit him. The cargo was intact, but on the floor were marks, muddy shoe prints that weren't his. He followed them with his eyes and saw they trailed off in the opposite direction of the highway. Reuben swallowed hard, closed the container, and decided not to look again. He climbed back into the trailer and continued the journey. By mid-morning, he got a call from Marcos. "How is it going, Reuben?" his boss asked. "Fine, though the truck's making weird noises. I think something's rattling in the back." "That's impossible. We checked every detail yesterday. Maybe it's just your imagination." Reuben wanted to reply, but the call cut off. He checked his phone. No signal. He sighed. In the distance, a sharp curve approached, and as he rounded it, a dog darted across the road. He slammed on the brakes, and the trailer skidded a few meters before stopping. He was breathing heavily when a murmur came from the passenger seat, a female voice. "Why did you bring it back?" Reuben turned, and for a moment he thought he saw a blurry silhouette, a woman with long hair, sitting beside him. He blinked, and the figure was gone. The air in the cab turned icy. A smell of damp earth filled the space. Reuben started the engine and kept driving, trying to ignore what had just happened. But he knew something in Trailer 47 was awakening. The sun began to sink behind the mountains as Reuben passed the last town. The road grew narrower, winding through forests and hills. The cargo was to be delivered at an abandoned plant near the Chula River, a place few wanted to talk about. They said it had once been a storage facility, but after a fire, no one worked there anymore. Reuben tried to focus on the road, but the echo of the female voice lingered in his mind. The clock read 7 in the evening when a thick fog began to blanket the highway. He turned on the high beams, but they barely pierced a few meters ahead. The radio, off since the earlier incident, came on by itself. An old melody started playing, a song from the 60s. The lyrics spoke of a lost love, but the voice sounded distorted, as if sang by someone from another time. Reuben lowered the volume, but the music persisted. He couldn't turn it off. Suddenly, a soft laugh slipped through the cords. It wasn't a man's voice. It came from the passenger seat. Reuben slowly turned his head. There she was again, the female figure, clearer than before. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken, and her dark hair fell messily over her shoulders. "Who are you?" Reuben asked, his voice trembling. The woman didn't answer. She just stared at him, a tear rolling down her cheek. "You didn't let me go," she whispered, her tone chilling Reuben's blood. The trailer began to shake. The lights flickered. Reuben gripped the steering wheel, struggling to maintain control. "Leave me alone," he shouted, but the woman kept staring, motionless, until she slowly faded away. The radio went silent instantly. The truck stabilized, and Reuben, panting, pulled over to the side of the road. He opened the door and stepped out to catch his breath. The silence was absolute. Not even the cricket's song could be heard. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the door. The cold air enveloped him, and for a moment he felt a strange peace. But then something caught his attention. At the back of the trailer, a shadow moved. He approached cautiously, flashlight in hand, and saw that the container's door was slightly ajar. He could have sworn he'd locked it. When he opened it fully, a smell of dampness and rust wafted out. The flashlight illuminated the crates, but on one of them, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. Property of Central Depot, Case 47. Inside the crate, wrapped in a dirty tarp, was an old mirror with a broken frame. Reuben glanced at it. His reflection seemed to move with a slight delay, as if it wasn't mimicking his movements in real time. Suddenly, in the reflection, the woman appeared behind him, smiling sadly. Reuben spun around, but no one was there. He looked back at the mirror, empty. He slammed the crate shut and closed the container with a bang. Back in the cab, he started the engine and sped off. He wanted to reach the plant by the river as soon as possible. During the drive, he thought of Marcos. Why had he assigned him this truck specifically? What was really inside? Maybe the cargo wasn't just merchandise, but something they needed to hide. Past midnight, Reuben arrived at the destination. The plant loomed imposing, its walls blackened by fire, and a rusted gate barely holding together. He opened the gate and drove to the center of the yard. The moonlight illuminated the place, revealing piles of scrap and twisted structures. He left the engine running and got out to check the documents. The route sheet indicated he was to unload the container in the main warehouse, but that warehouse no longer existed. Only ruins remained. Suddenly, he heard a whisper. It came from inside the container. "Reuben," it was a woman's voice. He turned, terrified. "Who's there?" he shouted. The wind answered with a mournful whistle. He walked toward the container, trembling. The voice came again, closer. "Help me." Reuben hesitated, but finally opened the doors. Inside, among the crates, the woman's figure became visible, more tangible than ever. She wore a white dress stained with dirt and blood. "I couldn't get out," she said, advancing slowly. He didn't let me rub, and stepped back. "Who are you talking about?" he asked, his voice breaking. The woman raised her gaze. "Marcos," she replied, a tear falling down her cheek. "He caused the crash. He wanted to hide it all." Reuben's heart froze. "What are you saying?" "He was driving the trailer that night. It wasn't an accident. He killed me and my father. Then they repaired the truck, but my soul stayed trapped in it." Reuben felt his legs give way. Behind the woman, another figure appeared, the old man from the road. His empty eyes stared at him with reproach. "You must finish what he started," the old man said. "Take the trailer back to the crash site." Before Reuben could respond, Both figures vanished like smoke. The container was empty again. Terrified, he climbed into the truck and drove aimlessly, following his instincts. He remembered the mountains, the same road where Trailer 47 had sat idle for so long. The clock read 3 in the morning when he reached that fateful curve. The fog covered everything, and the moon was barely visible. He slowed down, eyeing the abyss beside the road. The wind howled fiercely. He stopped and got out of the trailer. The silence was absolute, but then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Marcos was there, his boss, dressed the same as at the depot. "I knew you'd come," Marcos said coldly. "What's all this about?" Rubin asked. "You don't understand, Rubin. That trailer wasn't supposed to hit the road again. It holds what wasn't meant to survive." Rubin took a step back. "Did you kill that woman and her father?" Marcos smiled without emotion. "It wasn't my fault. They got in the way. No one was supposed to find out, but now you know." He pulled a gun from his jacket pocket and aimed it at Rubin. "You have to stay here with them," he whispered. But before he could fire, the ground shook. The trailer's lights began to flicker, and a deafening scream erupted from the container. Marcos turned, stunned. The trailer's door swung open on its own, and a gust of wind threw him inside. Rubin barely held his ground. Inside the container, a whirlwind of shadows swirled, and the woman's figure emerged, reaching out. "No more lies," she screamed as Marcos's body was dragged inside. The container slammed shut. Rubin stumbled back, terrified. Thuds, screams, and a metallic echo filled the air until everything went silent. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, there was no one. Only the mirror, now clean, reflecting the moonlight. Rubin approached and saw his own reflection. But behind him, the woman smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. "Now I can go." A strong gust of wind blew, and the mirror shattered. Rubin fell to his knees, exhausted. The trailer's engine started on its own. The lights illuminated the empty highway. Slowly, he got up, climbed into the cab, and drove off. He drove for hours without knowing where to go. At dawn, he reached the depot. The place was closed, deserted. There was no trace of Marcos or anyone else. He left the keys on the desk and walked away. He never returned. Weeks later, a new driver was assigned to Trailer 47. The mechanics swore the vehicle was in perfect condition, though some claimed to have seen handprints inside the container, as if someone had tried to get out. Since then, truckers avoid talking about Trailer 47. They say that on foggy nights, when the engine roars in the distance, a woman's voice whispers, "Help me." Some claim to have seen her in the passenger seat, staring ahead with that same infinite sadness. Others swear the mirror from the container always reappears, no matter how many times it's destroyed. Rubin now lives in a small coastal village. He no longer drives, no longer speaks of the past. But some nights, when the wind blows with a low hum, he thinks he hears the distant roar of an engine and the echo of a familiar voice. Then he closes his eyes and murmurs, "Rest at last." Trailer 47 was never found.